On Sports Today,
The coaches back-to-back.
for In Vogue, top people in 2 stories.
On 882 6PR.
I've been headhunted by the Fremantle Football Club, certainly taken through a PowerPoint presentation, the club's resources, their future direction and what they want to achieve. And an attractive offer was put in front of me. I'm an AFL career coach. I have a young family, 3 children and a wife. They are my purpose. And at the other end, I had no involvement or no understanding of the relationship between Fremantle Football Club and Mark Harvey. Here today, I hold my head high.
That was about 12 months ago, and now he's certainly entrenched in the Fremantle Dockers camp, and he coaches them into the finals for the first time. Ross Lyon joins us on the program. G'day, Ross.
G'day, Brad. How are you?
Going really well. You would have been pleased with the round-up of the home and away season last week, the way the boys went?
Well, it was a strong finish, really strong finish. So we've been playing some pretty good footy and created an opportunity. 14-8 is a good return for a home and away year, and obviously, a little bit disappointing we lost Luke McFarlane, but it gives someone else an opportunity, as all the coaches and players will say, and we'll plan and prepare like we have been for this Saturday night.
Any chance the bloke that went around in the car that got a standing ovation might get an opportunity, Anthony Grover? I mean, it was a very nice farewell that the fans gave him on the weekend. Hey?
Yeah, I didn't see it.
I
saw him in his suit after the game. He looked quite chuffed. So,
yeah.
Look, he's a really respected figure around here. Been a 200 game plus defender, pretty rare commodity at the Fremantle Football Club. So he'll certainly come to calculations, as will Alex. Or do we just go with what we want, really? And Michael Johnson's been playing tall anyway, and Adam McPhee played a bit taller. So we've got to look at it and the conditions and the composition of their team. So, yeah, it's a challenge for us.
Ross, you don't want to look backwards, I know that, but just with Luke, I mean, had he shown any signs of any sort of... It seems just so innocuous that he'd done his hammy. I mean, was there any telltale signs that he was a little proppy or anything? Or?
Well, I'd like to put myself up as a punching bag and say there was plenty of signs and we ignored them, but certainly there wasn't. Look, in hindsight, it's 2020, isn't it? We decided not to flirt with our form, and the only thing is, in hindsight, an older player, short week, and probably least wanted to lose. But look, it wasn't fatigue. You should come off a 17.5-minute break. It was 3 minutes, 40 seconds in to the third quarter, so it was just one of those events that happen, and we'll deal with it. And look, the positive thing is we can keep winning. We'll see Luke again. So he's got plenty of incentive, and we've got plenty of incentive in front of us as well.
Now, one bloke who I think we'd all forgotten about how good he actually is Aaron Sandlands. He has been terrific in the 3 games back, and for a bloke who'd been out for so long, Ross, you must be really pleased with the impact that he's had. He's been able to take marks, kick goals, and really distribute the ball by his good palming in the middle of the ground.
Yeah, accurate summary. We're thrilled with his leadership and his competitiveness, and it's really ironic. He's one of the few. Most players get better when they're out for a long spell, but with Aaron, for some reason, there was some pressure put on him, and regarding his future around the club. So he certainly answered that, and he's proving his worth.
And of course, look, it was never entered into your thoughts. A lot of people, we were all talking about it last week, whether you would have preferred to stay in Perth, would you prefer to be on the road? But momentum's the main thing, isn't it? I mean, you can't really control things you can't control, and momentum is what it's all about. Yeah,
spot on, Brad. It's sort of, I think we're all aware of certain situations, but once you take the eye off the ball, and we've worked really hard to play some pretty good football. I mean, if you look at all the indicators, we really stack up against anyone over the last 7 or 8 weeks. And what was the most critical period was when we come up against West Coast, and Richmond are a good team, and then North in Melbourne. Now, they were critical victories to affirm that what we're doing is right and we'll stand up against quality. So we didn't want to muck around with that. We've all worked really hard. And look, how do you manage 12 points in a game of AFL football, to be frank? But I think going in, most people would have thought the Kangaroos would have won by a lot more against GWS. So that was their average losing margin's been a lot higher than that. So look, we just played what was in front of us, and we felt we maintained form, and we did lose one. But out of that, everyone else is fit and available. So we're quite content where we are, and we've travelled really well this year.
I was going to... Now, that I think is the only time that you've actually spoken about travel since that very first interview that you had earlier this year.
Because I don't rate it. It's irrelevant.
Correct.
You've been part of great teams, and it's about mental toughness and making the harder choices and having no excuse. And that would be the philosophy. When you look at Collingwood, I think they've won 17 out of 18 games. When you're a good team, you win anywhere against anyone at any time. So, if you're a marginal team, well, travel becomes an issue.
Ross, do you see similarities about the way you beat North Melbourne and the way you need to go about beating Geelong? I mean, as I say, with your defensive style, lockdown, stop their chief playmakers and then play your own game?
Yeah, look, we really value defence. There's no doubt about that, and it creates opportunities with the ball. So we've been averaging, I think, 15.5 goals for us 7 or 8 weeks now. And that ranks you really highly. Geelong is 16.5. So I think that puts into context, defensively we're really strong and offensively we're strong. But more importantly, in the contest, our contested ball is a real feature. And those, the 3 phases, Yabby Jeans was a bit of a mentor really of mine, and he gave me a great ear. We had a few afternoons together and over a cup of tea, and the 3 phases that Abby really valued and espoused are the same ones that exist today. They've got it, we've got it, it's in dispute. So the game hasn't changed that much.
Crowley. Now, I thought you might have given
Ryan
him
to his friend.
Yeah, I thought Ryan, Crowles to the boys. Look, I thought he might have got a break the other night, but he still got a job, and the job he did again on Nathan Jones was terrific. Stevie J is under suspension at the moment if he accepts his penalty, so it might mean that he goes to Joel Selwood.
Yeah, look, Joel's a champion of the game, isn't he? Great player, and I know the Saints, really went after Joel as well, but it didn't do them much good, did it? So, look, as I look at the board, in the office now, there's Corey, Kelly, Selwood, Bartel, Chapman, so Ryan could be a really busy man come Saturday night.
But you obviously, on a serious side of things, you'll give him a task. And when do you usually tell your blokes that they've got a job?
Really late.
Yeah?
Really late, yeah.
But when
really
they're running out, or?
I always narrow it down to about 2 or 3. When he's in the last team meeting, which we'll have in Melbourne, it'll be official. And sometimes I'll leave it to the next morning and say I'm still deciding, mate. I'm sort of sitting on the fence, and you know what Twitter's like and texting and that now. So all the contacts with the club, I don't like things to get out.
So is that also so that they don't fret too much? Maybe.
Yeah, look, a lot of people like to know. Clint Jones every Thursday night, Tony Elshaw used to sit down with him and for half an hour after our last team meeting and go through the vision, so he would know then. Ryan's a little bit different. He'll go through in his own time, and I tend to tell him later. I'll give him a guide early in the week. There's probably 2 or 3 you should look at, mate. So when I throw something at you, make sure you know all of them.
Standard for the media over here anyway, Ross. They're all saying who's going to be Mr. September for your team. Tom Hawkins' name invariably comes up. I mean, he is a giant problem, isn't he? I mean, the kid has just evolved so much in 12 months. I mean, last year's grand final was handballing the ball to somebody standing next to him. Now he's just dobbing them from everywhere.
Oh, he's a great story, isn't it? And from afar, he was that, father-son, and he was much hyped and walking into a great team. And it was really difficult for him. And from the outside, I think he's a case study of how much pressure we put on young players. But if you give them time and tools and they do the work and they get mentored well, they come through. So, he's a pretty special player in a minute, so he's going to be a handful. But as always, it really is about supply. So if you pressure the kicks in, whoever's on him and gets some roll-off will be fine. But if they're just walking it out of our forward line and midfield, whoever's on him is going to be in trouble. There's no doubt about that. Mm. I think he kicked 5 in round 1 against us.
Yeah, I think he's a fine player, and of course that's what you looked at. I mean, one thing about Geelong, they've got a healthy mix of in and under, and they've also got those outsiders who do a bit of damage. So, how will you approach that? Will you be careful not to have too many bees to the honeypot? Because they do get outside; they're hard to stop.
Yeah, it's a decision-making game. Our mids are in really good nick. They've built the form, and we're a significantly different team to even. We were 5-2 at the start of the year, but our style wasn't cemented yet. We had to really smooth off a lot of rough edges and layers and understanding, and we're a miles better team than even when we were 5-2. So, I'm really excited to test ourselves against what is the reigning premier. I don't think we can forget that. They are the reigning premier, so it's going to be a great challenge.
Now, Matthew Pavlich won, I think, his first Australian jumper as a defender. Might there be a chance that we might see him swung into the role against Hawkins if required?
Right, not
funny you say that. I did have that thought last night. Because because we kicked a lot of goals against Kangaroos without Matthew. Does he go back and defend and be an architect? I did have that thought, and that could be Plan B potentially. But I remember there was a time Nick Rewalt was struggling for a bit of form. And I said, why don't I put you to centre half back? And he said, don't do that to me, coach. I had 4 kicked them in the first quarter. So I think Matthew might be too keen to go back.
Yeah, I know it's going to be an outstanding game, mate. We're really looking forward to it. We really appreciate your time, and no doubt we'll be speaking next Monday, win, lose or draw.
Look forward to it. Cheers, Brad. Thanks, Phil.
Ross Lyon there from the Fremantle Dockers.